Hey everyone! Today we're diving into something that's so uniquely Korean, a phenomenon that you won't really see anywhere else in the world. So I'm talking about 재건축 and 재개발, which basically means redevelopment or the constant tearing down and rebuilding of apartments here in Seoul. So while other countries might renovate or build new housing once in a while, in Korea we take it to a whole new level. It's like a never-ending cycle of destruction and creation, and it's not just about housing. It's tied deeply to culture, economics, politics, and even the dreams of everyday people. Now, just to give you a bit of background on where I'm coming from, I used to work in financial advisory at a Big Four consulting firm, and there I was directly involved in major development projects, project financing, and everything from feasibility studies to execution. So I got to experience the entire process firsthand. And on top of that, I personally invest in real estate too. So what I'm sharing today comes not just from research, but from being right in the thick of it. And honestly, I have so much to talk about when it comes to Korea's real estate, the complex processes, unique and often inconsistent regulations, and the wild case-by-case stories behind each project. But today's video is more like an intro, a big picture overview of this whole real estate craze happening right now in Seoul. And in this video, I'm gonna explain why Koreans are so obsessed with this process, how it affects real estate prices, and what regulations are driving it, and how it's shaping the future of Seoul. So let's jump in. Alright, let's start with definitions. 재건축, reconstruction, usually refers to tearing down old apartment buildings, usually when they've aged to a certain point or are unsafe or inconvenient, and rebuilding on the same land, often with more floors, modern facilities. And 재개발, redevelopment, tends to mean working in older districts or neighborhoods, often involving changing the land use, reorganizing roads, improving infrastructure, sometimes combining multiple land parcels to create bigger complexes. It can involve replacing lower housing, like villages, older, small homes, with apartment blocks. Both are legal regulatory processes involving local government, resident associations, approvals, compensation and relocation, design, financing, and etc. Here's a general overview of how the process works in Seoul. First, aging and eligibility. Apartments must meet certain age thresholds of 20 to 30 years or safety standards. Pretty simple, right? And there's resident agreement and association formation. A majority of residents must agree to proceed. This is often the hardest part of the process because many of these complexes have over 1,000 units and reaching consensus is tough. Once there's enough support, a resident association is formed to begin official negotiations and planning. Next is district designation. The local government, usually the Seoul city government, officially designates the area as a redevelopment or reconstruction zone. This gives the project legal status to move forward. Next, planning, design, and financing. At this stage, zoning regulations, floor area ratio, height restrictions, required public contributions, and plans for mixed-use development like retail or community facilities are all reviewed and finalized. Financing also becomes a key factor here. And then we have relocation and temporary housing. Residents must vacate their homes during construction. They're sometimes provided with temporary housing or receive financial compensation, depending on the project terms. And lastly, construction and redelivery. Once construction is complete, the new apartment units are delivered. This whole process sometimes takes over 10 to 20 years, so it's slow, but that's part of the tension. There are many obstacles as well. Resident disputes like who gets what unit, what design, or which construction company, and etc. And legal objections, funding, relocation logistics, zoning and building regulation constraints, height limits, and etc. Also, because many older apartment complexes are tightly packed, small lots, narrow roads, it's expensive to rebuild given high construction costs, land costs, demolition, and legal delays. And owning an apartment in Seoul isn't just about having a place to live. It's about status, security, and prestige. Many believe that the potential for redevelopment massively increases the property's value. That helps explain why even a small unit in these buildings can cost over $4 million, around 5 billion Korean won. Many parents, many families see property as the safest investment. It's a hedge against inflation, against economic turbulence. Also because housing supply is limited, especially in good school zones, well-connected areas, people pay extra for location, for potential reconstruction, and etc. So the term 재건축 로또, which literally means reconstruction lottery, is commonly used. So if your building qualifies, your property value may shoot up drastically. Speculators, or hopefully investors, buy older apartments based on anticipated rebuilding or redevelopment. They accept that they may wait years and pay cost for the potential upside. Developers also monitor these complexes, seeing aging quotas, zoning relaxation, height and floor area ratio bonuses as signals. And many people buy not because they want to live there long term, but to benefit from the jump in price once the project succeeds. This is a big driver of demand. On the other side, many residents want newer, safer, more energy-efficient homes, modern amenities, parking, elevators, better infrastructure, of course. Older buildings sometimes fail safety standards, lack parking, have inefficient layout, or old pipes. And redevelopment can improve quality of life by providing better infrastructure, better public amenities, more shops, and better transit access if integrated well. But of course, there are downsides too. Relocation burdens, waiting many years, contribution costs, and some residents may lose out if their unit is small, low floor, less favorable orientation. Also, elderly residents may dislike moving, and community ties broken, noise, disruption, uncertainty, cost overruns, and etc. In recent years, Seoul and national government have been easing certain rules to encourage more reconstruction and redevelopment. For example, relaxing aging requirement. So earlier, it was that apartments must be 40 years old to qualify for reconstruction. But now, in some cases, this is lowered to 30 years, especially if convenience issues are considered. Floor area ratio and height limits are also being relaxed in many redevelopment zones. For example, in some areas in Seoul, complexes with crowded 15-floor buildings will be allowed up to 60 floors, floor area ratio up to 400%, and have mixed-use zoning of office and shops, for example, required for some portion of the redevelopment. Also, Seoul has announced plans to shorten the redevelopment and reconstruction process from district designation to move-in, from the current average of around 18.5 years to approximately 13 years, a reduction of 5.5 years. The city aims to achieve this by overlapping administrative procedures, expediting planning steps, and deploying conflict management officers, among other measures. However, it's important to note that this is only an announcement at this stage because, in many cases, the primary cause of delays has not been the approval process itself, but rather prolonged disputes among residents. Whether this plan will meaningfully shorten the overall timeline remains to be seen. Also, we're seeing regulatory easing, removing maximum height restrictions in some zones, increasing building height caps and floor area ratio in central and station areas. For example, 잠실 주공 5단지 was built in 1978. As part of Seoul's basic development plan, this complex is set to be torn down and rebuilt up to 70 stories. The floor area ratio and height bonuses under the new plan are making previously unprofitable rebuilds more feasible. One of the most notable recent shifts in Korea's redevelopment landscape is the stronger emphasis on public interest. So, in major urban redevelopment and reconstruction projects, especially in Seoul, developers are now required to allocate a portion of new housing units, typically around 10 to 20% as public rental housing. This marks a significant change from previous policies that focus heavily on private supply and market-driven outcomes. Moreover, when developers seek to increase project density by raising the floor area ratio, they are now expected to return part of that added value to the public sector. This can take several forms, like public use space allocations, land donations, infrastructure contributions, or land cost sharing. These policy shifts reflect the government's attempt to strike a balance, reducing excessive speculative profits while ensuring that redevelopment serves a broader public good such as affordability, livability, and equitable access to housing. At the same time, to curb speculative purchases, the government has introduced or expanded regulations such as requiring permits for for apartment purchases in certain wealthy districts like Gangnam, Seoul, Songpa, and Yongsan, unless the buyer intends to actually live there by limiting mortgages for individuals with multiple properties and monitoring and investigating suspicious transactions. However, these measures have caused some inconvenience and backlash from the public as the restriction applied only to Korean citizens, leaving foreign speculative capital flows into Seoul's real estate market largely unchecked. Also, there are easing greenbelt restrictions and expanding areas eligible for redevelopment to increase supply to help cool price increases. So as you can imagine, if the project goes through, their unit's resale value may jump dramatically, especially in prime areas like Gangnam districts or near good transit. But the wait is long, sometimes many years, sometimes over a few decades. And some fail due to opposition, cost escalation, and legal disputes. Seoul's obsession with 재건축 and 재개발 is understandable. It promises new homes, profit, prestige, and change. But it's a high-stakes game. The policies are changing, the tensions are real, and some will win big, others will lose. If you found this video interesting, please subscribe for more deep dives into life in Korea. Thanks for watching.